What up, everybody? InstructaBeats back again here with another dividing fractions lesson. Today we're going to be dividing unit fractions and whole numbers using a common denominator. So to help you wake your brain up, on previous InstructaBeats lessons, when you activated your fraction brain, you downloaded these two lessons. So we did whole numbers divided by unit fractions and unit fractions divided by whole numbers, but for both of these lessons you see here, we were drawing models to help us understand what we were doing. So today we're going to be a little bit less artistic and a little bit quicker to kind of help you get through these problems quicker and easier while still connecting it to what you guys did in previous lessons. Which leads us to our objective today. Today's objective that we hope to download into our math brain. Today I will be able to divide a unit fraction and a whole number, or a whole number and unit fraction, by finding a common denominator. So here we have Robby. Let's take a look at Robbies steps to divide fractions and whole numbers by finding a common denominator. Okay, so we're going to write these steps down and then we will apply them and connect them to what you've learned previously. So step number one, you want to turn the whole number into a fraction by making the denominator a 1. Step number two, use your equivalent fraction skills to find a common denominator, much like we did when we were comparing fractions or adding and subtracting fractions. Step number three, we want to write the numerators now as a fraction. So I'll show you an example of that. That will make sense how we kind of go from step 2 to step 3, and then you'll kind of be able to do it. And then at the end, we want to divide that fraction because, as we know, right, fractions are really division equations. So we're going to write the numerators as a fraction and then divide that fraction and simplify if needed. So again, just pause the video, make sure these are down in your notes, and then we'll take a look at how we use these steps. So over here you see we have Robbies steps to divide our fractions, and we're going to use those. But if you notice, normally we do an I do, we do, you try problem, but we're actually going to have two we do's. Okay, so for we do number one, we do number two, I want both of those in your notes, and that way you can kind of look at them next to each other and see what is similar and what is different. If you notice, these are going to be two problems from our previous lesson that we already solved with models, but now we're going to be doing it mathematically. So step number one is pretty easy, right? It says turn the whole number into a fraction. So here, our dividend is the whole number, so we're doing 3 divided by 1/5. And it's okay if you already know the answer because you just did the lesson, or maybe you already know kind of a shortcut to do this. But I'm going to make it into a fraction by putting a 1 as the denominator. So if you notice, the problem is here, now I have two fractions that are built with different unit fractions, right? In other words, the denominators are different. So we want to find a common denominator between them. So you can do the pattern method. Maybe you just can multiply by 1. Maybe you can simplify one of them. However you want to come up with that. But it's kind of easy when it's a whole number because I know that I can turn 1 into a 5 by multiplying by the big one, 5 over 5. So mathematically, right, what we're doing is we're multiplying by a fraction equivalent to 1. 5 over 5, and we're going to get 15/5. So I know that 3 over 1 is really equivalent to 15/5. Now I have my common denominator, right? I have a 5 in both my dividend and my divisor. So now we have step number 3, which is write the numerators as a fraction. So 15 divided by 1, right, is going to give me 15 over 1. Now you can see that the denominators are going to cancel out because 15 divided by 5 is really just 1. So this would almost be like a triple fraction, okay, 15 over 1, but anything divided by 1 is itself. So we never actually write the denominator. We just kind of cancel these out once we find the common denominator. It's kind of the shortcut for what we're doing. And now step number 4, we're going to divide, right, because 15 divided by 1, and that's going to be easy. It's just going to be 15, and then we can't simplify that because that's a whole number. So 3 divided by 1/5, right, would give me 15. And again, this is just showing mathematically what we've learned in previous lessons. So let's quickly connect it to what we talked about before. So if you watched our previous lesson, when we're doing a whole number divided by a fraction, we're thinking, okay, I have 3. Let me divide that into groups of 1/5 and see how many groups I can make. So let me quickly draw out 3 holes. Okay, so here are my 3 holes, and I want to make groups of 1/5, which means I need to split these 3 wholes into fifths. Well, if you look right here, once I do that, and you can see it's not perfect, right? But when I do that, I now have fifths, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right? That's what you're doing mathematically when you turn 3 over 1 into 15 fifths. It's just like when you split the model up. And now all we're doing, right, is we're asking ourselves, how many groups of 1/5 can I make? Well, each of these would be a group, right? And when I do this, obviously you're going to see, because I'm really just doing groups of 1/5, I have 15 groups that I just made, which is what my answer is. So finding a common denominator is just showing you mathematically what you did when you drew the models. It's not a shortcut, okay, because you should be able to explain it and draw the models to prove your answer. It's just a quicker way to do it, only showing the math and not all the art. Let's take a look at another we do problem. And again, I want this one down in your notes next to it, because if you notice, all we did was we switched the divisor and the dividend, right? Our dividend is now 1/5, our divisor is now 3. But I'm going to use these same exact steps. First, I'm going to turn the whole number into a fraction by making the denominator 1. And then we're going to find a common denominator, which we just did. We know 3 over 1 is going to turn into 15 fifths. So let me do 1/5 divided by 15 fifths. And then just like before, because we're doing 5 divided by 5, that just kind of cancels out, right? So we don't actually need to do that math because we know 5 divided by 5 is just 1, and then anything divided by 1 is going to be itself. So we look at the numerators and write them as a fraction because we know the fraction bar is really just a division sign, right? So 1 divided by 15, and I write that as a fraction. 1 divided by 15. Now, I can't simplify it, so my answer is 1/15. 1/5 divided by 3 is 1/15. If you notice, this quotient is a reciprocal of the we do number 1 problem. So again, let me connect it back to what we did in previous lessons. So if we had 1/5, here we go, robot magic, and we wanted to divide that into 3 groups. Okay, so the other way, right, I'm just going to split this into 3 groups. And here you can see my 3 groups, right, because we know division and multiplication are both equal groups. How many were in each group? Well, 1 out of 15 total now, right? Because I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So my new denominator is 15, and in each group I have 1 of those. So again, finding a common denominator is just the mathematical way to represent what you were doing when you drew area models. So let's take a look at a U-try problem. So here I have 2 U-try problems. I don't need you to draw the model to prove your answer this time. I just wanted to kind of connect it to what we were doing, show you it's not something abstract. It's just a next step mathematically in what we've been teaching you. Go ahead and pause the video, try both of these, and then push play to check your work. So hopefully you just paused it. I'm going to quickly go over it so you can kind of self-check. And if you got it wrong, that's okay. Just fix your mistake. It's okay to fail as long as you learn from it. So let's jump right in. First of all, I'm going to follow my steps, turn this into 1. Okay, whatever way you wanted to figure this out, I know that 8 over 1 can turn into 6. So I'm going to multiply by the fraction 6, 6, and I'm going to get 48, 6 divided by 1, 6. I know that when my denominators are the same, those just cancel out because 6 divided by 6 is 1. Then I'm going to write my numerators as a fraction, so 48 divided by 1, right? You can kind of see that right there. And when I divide 48 divided by 1, my answer is going to be 48. So some of you might have kind of found a pattern, right? You might just be multiplying 8 times 6 to get that. And that's okay, but these are the same steps that if this wasn't a unit fraction, you could solve it this way, except there'd actually have to be a number you would divide, right? It wouldn't be as simple as 48 over 1. So knowing the steps on the easy ones will help you when you get to bigger numbers or harder problems where you can't just kind of look at it and figure it out with the pattern, but you actually have to do the math. So again, here we go, 8 over 1, but now it's my divisor. I know that's going to turn into 48 over 1, or sorry, 48 over 6. So 1/6 divided by 48 over 6, found my common denominator. Those cancel out. And if I write my numerators as a fraction, this time I get 1 divided by 48. So the quotient of 1/6 divided by 8 is 1/48. So hopefully you got those two right. If you're ready for a challenge, go ahead and check out the next one when we're dividing non-unit fractions or even mixed numbers, and you can kind of take that next step. If you're still not quite sure, go find someone who can help you out, or go back and rewatch the video. Again, we really appreciate you checking out InstructaBeats today. We know there's lots of different options online. Thank you so much for checking us out. Check us out at InstructaBeats.com. Check out our merch that we have there, and all our other videos, timers, and songs. Again, thank you so much. InstructaBeats out.